Well, hi there. You're watching and or listening to Podcast is Broken, a weekly podcast in which we try to make Canadian news and politics thunder. My name is Brittlestar.
I don't really know what that was. I'm Steve Boots, and I'm going to say this week we're just going to actually bring the vibes down a little bit. We're going to bum everybody out.
Oh.
My name's Lisa.
Just
and I was
kidding.
I was already bummed out and sad. I was like, I think we make it whimsical, but like, I don't want to be a downer with Steve. So, hello.
That's it. That's all Lisa's going to give this week is a hello.
No,
Hello.
I said hello.
I know, but then Steve yammered all over top of me.
Shut up, Steve.
Shut up, Steve. So thanks again for joining us. And how are you guys doing? Doing all right?
Fantastic. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm medicated and not with alcohol, but yeah,
Other stuff.
well, just not prescription. What are they called? Over the counter tablets.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah. I'm a cheap drunk when it comes to stuff like that, like Tylenol, Advil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wipes me out.
A nice Neocitrin in the evening.
Oh, the Neocitrin, and then followed by a quick beer. Oh,
right out.
The Neocitrin. He actually just heats up a beer and mixes it with the Neocitrin.
Oh,
it is
now we're talking.
It is vile.
It's the white middle-aged man version of lean, is what it is.
Delicious.
It's like an Ensure that puts you into a 6-day coma. It's fantastic.
Exactly. Well, let's get down to business. So what the hell is going on with Canada's premiers? Let's first of all just make note of the fact that this week Pierre Poilievre's second non-confidence vote in the past 2 weeks failed.
What?
In fairness, failure is kind of his whole deal.
It's like, but it's begging for, in 22 minutes, if you're listening, it's begging for a Groundhog Day sketch. You know what I mean? It'll be this. It won't stop. It's just going to keep on going.
Oh yeah, we'll get non-confidence motions for probably until at least Christmas. Yeah, like the blockers saying they're going to bring the government down. They're not going to bring the government down.
No. It's not in their interest to do so. Not yet. Anyway, maybe never.
Well, and they're making an ask they know Trudeau is never going to meet, right? So
yeah. Ugh. Anyway, neat.
Forget this
move
federal
on.
Stuff. Let's talk provincial.
Every layer of government's a mess, man.
It is. So anyways, the premiers of Canada have seemingly all decided that this was the week to collectively start announcing their most off-the-wall, almost ideas. And a great place to start out, just to give you a sense of what we're dealing with here, is Doug Ford's underground tunnel system beneath the 401 highway. Now, are you guys familiar with the 401 highway? Like, I know, obviously, you're not in Ontario, but have you been on the 401 before?
No.
I've been on the 401. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And just the experience, even just having seen it, Steve, you would think to yourself, I think a tunnel would be disruptive. I think building that tunnel might take a bit.
I know exactly enough about the 401 to know that I never, ever want to be on it. I get stressed out. Like, I'm from Saskatchewan, man. I'm from a mid-sized town. I get stressed out when there's like 8 cars on the road. Like, when you're driving on the 2-lane highway and there's like a grain truck coming the other way, that's traffic. That's stressful.
Traffic jam. Yeah. Honks. Start honking your horn.
Oh, when somebody's taking their sprayer down the narrow roads and you're just like, come on, dude, pull over.
I don't even know what that is. It sounds dirty. We'll just move right past that.
People take farm equipment down highways quite regularly in Saskatchewan. You get used to it.
And it's a crop sprayer. Right. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
There's different worlds colliding right now. It's so
Exactly.
He's from the non-agricultural half of Stratford. I was getting
It's the tiny
Stratford lesson before you logged on.
There's not a lot of crop sprayers on the 401 per se. So you don't have to worry about that, Steve. It's not like it's crawling with, it's not like bumper to bumper with crop sprayers. However,
who knew?
It is about like 16 lanes in some places. It is massive. And it is not fun. So, of course, people were saying he put forth this idea of building a tunnel, and it's just bonkers. It was. I couldn't believe my ears when he said it. It was so nonsense.
But you got to think outside of the box, right? That's kind of his gist. Is like we have to think of something new and unheard of. So we're just going to dig a giant ass tunnel. We're going to channel it through from Toronto.
My favorite one was when he said it's not going to run over budget or over schedule because, quote, we're good at building tunnels. And it's like every attempted expansion of the Toronto subway has been catastrophic.
Yes.
Really, what tunnels have you been good at? Can you point to a specific one, Doug?
As someone on Twitter said, hey, dude, just fix Eglinton first. Like, there's a street that's been constantly under repair for the past, I don't know, 20 years at least. And it's like, just fix what we got.
That's municipal. That's Chow's problem now, man.
So I have my pet theory for why he's doing this. Okay. And you can tell me if I'm wrong. It's going to require a little bit of context because it's something called a dead cat. So a dead cat was it's a strategy that was coined by Boris Johnson, former British Prime Minister, birthday clown,
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable giving this much credit to him, but we'll see where this goes.
So he wrote in an op-ed one time, quote, he was sharing a story where he was talking to an Australian political strategy guy. And he said, quote, there is one thing that is absolutely certain about throwing a dead cat on the dining room table, and I don't mean people will be outraged, alarmed, disgusted. That's true, but irrelevant. The key point, says my Australian friend, is that everyone will shout, geez, mate, there's a dead cat on the table. In other words, they'll be talking about the dead cat, the thing you want them to talk about, and they will not be talking about the issue that has been causing you so much grief.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. This is never getting built. Nobody sincerely thinks it's ever getting built. It's to get us not talking about the fact that Ontario's housing starts have not met their goals for like 27 straight months or something like that.
Yeah, it stinks of distraction, doesn't it? In a big way. He said, we'll look at all options. We'll put every option on the table, be it 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers. I believe he's planning.
I know numbers.
I think he actually planned 60 kilometers. It's like 60 kilometers it has to be. My theory is once you start boring, you never take the boring machine out of the ground. That's another dirty sentence. If you can afford 30 kilometers, then you do 30. Then you eventually continue on with the balance as well.
What? So he thinks you just like store the tunnel machine underground?
Yeah.
Okay, but is anyone getting the visual for like the movie Tremors? Like I'm just have this like visual of like these weirdo snakes coming up along the.
See, all I'm thinking of is that he spent the weekend watching Die Hard 3 and saw all the tunnel stuff, and he was like, "Oh, I know what to do."
That's perfect.
But like, I think the strategy really hinges on how bananas this idea is. Like a child can hear this and think like, there's no way that's the best answer.
Absolutely not.
He did make some kind of there was a quote saying like, oh, it's feasible because we have the right people to dig or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Who does he know that owns a company that will profit from
you don't understand. Doug has these secret special tunnel techniques that have never been shared. That he somehow has been keeping in his back pocket for this exact moment. When he had the little shovel, he was testing them out. That was what that was about.
Those little shovels will get you a good kilometer down the road. Not a problem. 60 of those shovels, nothing. You can get a McGiant Tiger. I think they're maybe like $4 or $5 each. It's fine. Infrastructure experts have warned that the cost will be astronomical, of course. Never mind the fact it'd be incredibly disruptive, like I said, and traffic would just be 10 times worse for the foreseeable.
What's the rough number?
He said, I can't remember what the rough number was. It was something like $30 billion, I believe. Maybe Owen knows.
Was it 60? Maybe I thought it was 60. Come on, stats, man.
I will look it up while you talk.
Okay. I think it's about $30 billion, but the big dig in Boston cost around $8 billion for a roughly 2.5 kilometer tunnel. $8 billion for 2.5 tunnel. While Washington State spent $2.15 billion on 3.2 kilometers of underground tunnels. So the math seems a little less mathy.
Globe and Mail saying 60 billion on the low end.
Yes. I mean,
so can I get on a soapbox for a second? I have a soapbox ready to go here. I have so many soapboxes.
Is that the one with your name on it? Go for it.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So the problem is that this whole thing hinges on a lack of understanding of the cause of the problem or the root of the problem. There's something called induced demand. Mm-hmm. And so if you've ever been on Twitter, you might have seen somebody saying, just one more lane, bro. Just one more lane, bro. And the idea is the studies have proven pretty consistently that if you build a road or expand a road or add a lane, it'll add over the first 5 years 6% more traffic per year, net traffic, and over the 5 years after that, 10% more traffic per year, net. You build more roads. By the time that road reaches the end of its service life, you will already have had to expand that road at least probably twice.
Sure.
But the other problem is it's Toronto. Like, there's no way to move that volume of people into and out of the city every day by car, no matter how many lanes you add, because they're all going into the same place. There's a built-in bottleneck.
But this tunnel is going to facilitate transit also.
Magic.
And if you don't have a car, you could probably walk the tunnel, or he'll have rainbow unicorns on either side to take it. Like, it's all fucking nuts. Like, it's just made up shit.
Yeah. Did he just amnesia past all the tunnels flooding in August?
Right?
Like, we all remember that?
It is bonkers. It is bonkers. And of course, there's the 407, which you guys may or may not be familiar with, which is the toll highway that runs north of the 401.
Yeah.
And it is not cheap. I think the length of it to drive it with when you don't have a transponder is about $70 roughly. So it's not cheap.
Holy Nikes.
Yeah, so it adds up. However, it can some days save you 45 minutes to an hour's worth of driving, which is if you're in a hurry, you're like, or you just want to be sitting in traffic, you're like, oh, okay, fine.
Steve and I are like, what?
Yeah, craziness. But usually, like actually in the most recent trips I've done back and forth to Toronto and through Toronto, past Toronto, it has saved only about 3 or 4 minutes by using the 407. So it's like we just don't use it. Don't use it as much anymore. So it's sitting there. And when you do use the 407, it is, remember that episode of Seinfeld where he adopted a mile of highway, Kramer did?
The luxury highway?
Yeah, and he painted the line so it was just one big lane. Yeah. It's a little bit like that. And then you sort of just, it's like it's totally different atmosphere than the 401.
Different vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different vibe entirely. But of course, people are like, well, that was built as a public toll highway and then sold for $3 billion or something like that. And it's now estimated to be worth $35 billion, which is still about half of what a tunnel would cost.
I did a deep dive on the numbers on that this week. I know them.
Okay.
The lease was a 99-year lease for $3 billion.
Yeah.
The highway was built for, the government says 1.6, but apparently the number is closer to like $6 billion. So it was built for about $6 billion, leased for 99 years for $3 billion. It's taken in $20 billion in revenue just since then. It is the only toll road in Canada that isn't a bridge or a border crossing. And it's now like $55 billion is the estimated, or sorry, $35 billion is the estimated worth. Like, the government has, like, and this was all, it was never even meant to be a toll highway. This was all just Mike Harris panicking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't they make it a transport highway? Why don't you put all like the...
Well, yeah, like a truck bypass idea.
Yeah.
Essentially, it would take the political will to buy out the lease, which could be done. Like, there's mechanisms in the lease to do that. But the problem is it's not sexy. It's not, you can't cut a ribbon on buying back a highway from a consortium.
And there's very little kickbacks in that. There's very little kickbacks as well, right?
Yeah. Whose pocket are you lining, right? Like,
yeah.
Well,
he'll find a way. Don't get me wrong, but
logistically, if this was to actually go through to start digging, can you imagine the horror on the 401? Like, how?
Oh, God.
How?
He insists it won't disrupt traffic at all. They're just going to dig out underneath while you're sleeping.
Do you remember that game, like in the, I don't know, maybe late 80s, early 90s, Digger? Or it was like, does he think that that's it? That it's like a little digger thing that just goes and like magically there's...
Well, probably. I'm sure he thinks that. I mean, once you get the boring machine in the ground, just keep on going.
Just keep on going.
He watched that documentary from the early 2000s, The Core, and saw the people in that tunneling machine that just like shot through the ground, and they were like, man, that's the way.
Yeah, exactly. And
Walls was in it, just wins all around.
It makes no sense whatsoever. And of course, I mean, as someone who drives the 401 a lot,
you poor thing.
I know. This is why I am the way I am. But it should take about an hour and 45 minutes for me to get from my front door to downtown Toronto.
Okay.
In like reasonable, not crazy traffic. If the traffic's moving, that's how long it'll take me to get to downtown. And now, on average, it takes 2 to 2.5 hours to go there or back from either to downtown or from downtown. Just because there's just congestion, and there's like crazy congestion in the weirdest parts of the 401 as well, like in Milton and stuff like that, where you're like, you drive through the congestion, you're like, no one was turning off, no one was getting on. What the hell was going on? So the idea that they would take that already madness in traffic and congestion and say, now we're going to reduce you down to like one lane for, I don't know, a few years while we make a tunnel. Is like, I think people would go crazy.
I can't imagine any potential consequences.
Oh my God.
And that's travel in like ideal road conditions, right? So
that's like
winter
exactly.
and
Yeah.
Good luck.
Insanity.
Good luck, GTA.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
So we think obviously this is going to be a distraction thing. We think that's entirely what it is. We think it's because I think it was hilarious how he doubled down in his one press conference and said, I can tell you one thing, the tunnel's getting built.
Here's the thing that I can't wrap my head around more than anything else is you are a province in a massive housing crisis, at a scale that is hard to wrap your head around. Think about the construction crews that are going to be tied up on this project for a decade.
At least. Yeah.
Right? Like, that is not a small project. That is massive crews getting tied up.
It's like building the
could
tunnel.
be working in all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah.
I believe on the scale, it's pretty comparable. It's not undersea, which
so.
I think makes it pretty different, but
yeah.
Not as
it's
cool.
wetter. They're 50 kilometers for the tunnel.
I have no idea what the groundwater situation is there. Like, it might be like genuinely like with Great Lakes and stuff. I have no idea how much they're dealing with groundwater there
I don't know
how deep they're digging.
I mean,
Do they know that? Have they surveyed that? They
Not a
probably
clue.
haven't.
They'll figure that out.
I don't know the first thing about Southern Ontario geography.
That's kind of
There's a lot of
speaks
lakes
to the
there.
fact as well that he said, I tell you one thing, this tunnel's getting built, and then being so adamant about it and saying we're going to do feasibility and stuff. Maybe that's the only greasy palms area of this whole thing. Maybe that's
maybe.
it.
You know
He
what the
knows there's
feasibility
nothing
study is looking at?
made. Oh,
It's
can't
not
wait.
even looking at whether or not it's feasible. It's already been decided. They're just
it
looking at how
imaginable?
long. They're just deciding how long
Yes.
it's going to be. I missed the first bit and I saw you squeezing your face up and going, yes. And I don't know what to take away
Oh,
from
and I was saying it wasn't a feasibility study. It was an imaginable study. Can you imagine it?
Yes.
Yes, I can imagine it.
We're gonna make it
I
happen.
didn't realize that imagining was physical exertion for you.
It is for some of us, Steve.
It's Doug-O. It's Doug Ford.
Exactly. I've got an idea coming. Hang on.
Exhausting. It's exhausting.
But thank goodness the other premiers are totally sane. Like our
Smooth as
good
butter.
friend Scott Moe in Saskatchewan.
Momo.
Do you know anyone that lives in Saskatchewan? You guys?
No, not a thing. Not a person. No, never met anybody. He's quite a fella. So he decided to take time aside on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation
Classic.
to announce the election was coming the next day. So rather than announce the election on the day of the election, he pre-announced the election on National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Yeah.
And so he's rolled out a couple of his plans. He's announced a big income tax cut. That's his big election platform.
Mhm.
Despite the fact that, I always love, tell me I'm not the only one who gets driven nuts by this. When politicians have been in office for 4 years, and then when the election comes, they're like, hey, so like on the weekend, I just came up with all of the ways to fix all these problems I've been seeing on.
Yeah.
You got a family of four, $3,400? Yeah.
Simultaneously. Right?
It's transparent. I don't think people care though. I think people are like, $3,400, sure.
I think people are a lot more skeptical of Scott Moe's claims than they have been in the past.
Right.
Like, I genuinely
I can't
think,
imagine why.
like, here's the thing. Saskatchewan has done this thing for a really long time. Like, there are places where incumbency is really powerful. Like in municipal politics, incumbency is huge. Like if you've got a long-standing mayor, getting them out is not an easy thing. In Saskatchewan, politics runs in these really long cycles generally, where a party gets in and everybody, like people become team players, and there's this sort of like don't poke holes in the boat mentality.
Right.
And that holds for a long time. Like the previous NDP government was in for 4 terms, I believe. And now this government's been in for 4 terms. But what happens is the longer you're in, the longer that record sticks to you. And you can like tell somebody things are great all you like, but they've been ripping off municipalities for 20 years. And so people, I think, are falling for it less and less and less.
But of course, he's still, from producer Owen's notes here, and I'm just pulling up the link to it as well, still ranked one of the most popular premiers. His approval rating is still ranked as 3rd highest with Wab Kinew. He's at 45%. Wab Kinew is at the top with 66%. What's going on? What, like, why?
So
no comment.
So, the long answer or the short answer? Because the short answer is people don't care.
Yeah.
And the long answer is it's just vibe-based politics. If you live in a rural community in Saskatchewan these days, the hot and popular thing to do is to hate Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
Right? Like, when you drive through Saskatchewan, rural Saskatchewan, you see F. Trudeau signs and trucks and flags all over the place. Like, it's not an uncommon thing to see. And so Scott Moe has pinned himself entirely to the anti-Trudeau thing. And so I think a lot of it is much less of an approval of Scott Moe than it is a rejection of Justin Trudeau.
Right. It's an Angus Reid Institute poll, by the way.
In Saskatchewan, has maybe hewn a hair to the right, just a smidgeroo.
Just a little bit.
But you guys aren't. He's not collecting the carbon tax from you guys, and sending it to Big Bad Justin. So,
okay. So this is the most bananagram scam of them all. So Scott Moe has been fighting the carbon tax forever. Oh God, I'm rambling again. Tell me to shut up if need to be. Scott Moe has been. If you want
Steve to shut up, please add it in the comments. That'd be great.
He's been fighting the carbon tax forever. There was the court fight against the government about it that they lost, that they tried to get the carbon tax removed. So Scott Moe and the province eventually reached an agreement where the province would collect and retain the carbon tax in province from industrial producers. Individual producers still pay their carbon tax, or individual consumers pay their carbon tax as you would, with the exception of home heating for other stupid reasons. But so what happened was they changed all of that so that the carbon tax money from industrial producers stays in Saskatchewan and it goes to the provincial government to spend in a green energy fund. There's almost $400 million in there. How much of it do you think they have spent?
Is it?
It's either none of it or all of it.
Yeah.
It's a tight zero, friends. The Saskatchewan government's sitting on a $500 million slush fund to spend on whatever project they think is convenient while complaining about the carbon tax. Damn that carbon tax filling up our $500 million slush fund.
Saskatchewan, now there's a place for a tunnel right there.
Right?
Oh. I remember when I was a kid being like, why doesn't Regina have a subway? It's like, as an adult, it's like, oh, so many reasons.
Yeah.
I'll give you some advice from Alberta. I know we'll get to Alberta later, but we were promised lowered personal income tax when the UCP was running.
One of these days.
To which we are not getting it until potentially 2027. So
conveniently right around election, right?
Right around election time. So if Momo's making promises. Yeah, I know.
What a weird coincidence.
If only we could predict how politicians do things.
Yeah.
If only.
Yeah.
Same game every time.
Yeah.
Let's move our attention away from Saskatchewan, finally.
Bless.
Just kidding, Saskatchewan. I apologize to all 4 of you. Yeah. Let's go out west now and talk about BC Conservative leader John Rustad and has claimed if he wins the October 19th provincial election, the province would partner with First Nations and unleash the potential of mining and forestry, which sounds vaguely threatening to me. He had previously said he plans to repeal BC legislation adopting United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
Which he voted for.
Yeah. And now his party released a statement saying it would honor the declaration, quote, as it was intended. So what do we think about this dude? Because he's said some goofy stuff.
He's a born again conservative because he used to be, right? And so anything born again.
Yeah.
So I think everything you need to know about him can be summed up by the fact that, have you seen him wearing that Moose Hide campaign pin all the time?
Yeah.
He wears the Moose Hide campaign pin. It's a campaign about awareness and standing against violence against women and girls in particular, but I think it's violence in general. Yes,
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I believe it is. I met the guy who started it, and
they have.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for those who don't know, it's a little square of moose hide, of leather, essentially, that's pinned to your jacket or whatever, your shirt, or that type of thing.
They've withdrawn his permission to wear it.
That's rough.
That's a message.
I don't know if I've ever heard of an organization withdrawing a politician's permission to support them, but holy smokes.
Yeah, that's weird.
I mean, I don't blame them. They're being used as a prop. They are right to do that.
Sure.
Yeah. But holy smokes.
That's like one step away from being told you can't wear the poppy or something.
Right?
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Like, you are so awful that we do not want to associate with you is really telling.
I was reading a little article on Rustad, just like who he is and, his history politically and, how difficult things came around and he had some hard few years and he was just, trying to figure out his way. And I was getting suckered into the aw.
For a split second, he thought he was human.
Little poor politician trying to find his way to do good in the world. And then I heard that the born again part was during the convoy and seeing the pride of these truckers. And I was like, all right, well, you're done.
So whenever a politician says they're looking for their political space or whatever, they're loudly announcing that they're just a political mercenary. They just want to play for a winning team.
Yeah,
sure.
They weren't winning here. And so we're going to find something else to try to win at.
So something else. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, it's just, he's repeating conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. Yeah. And I think it's kind of a Danielle Smith thing where I don't think he believes it. He'll just say whatever the people in the room want him to say.
Because he's got some issues with people who are candidates who are a little bit goofy, supporters of January 6th. So that was just Antifa in disguise.
Yeah.
Good old
Trump
Antifa.
won the election. Yeah. All that kind of stuff. And so he's being sort of forced to deal with these people. And that's not good.
But he's not dealing with them. He's just letting them spin their tires. There's folks who are saying some just awful stuff. And they sort of shrug and say, yeah, they say stuff sometimes. What are you going to do?
We had a conversation about this recently saying how my view is that, prior to social media, there was just as many crackpot, stupid ideas that people would espouse and blurt out into the void. However, social media has convinced, I think, just this maybe, I was going to say our generation, but I didn't want to insult either one of you. Our general generations that there's merit just because it's published online. There's merit. It's the same reason people look at Facebook and go, "Oh, I read it on Facebook. That's where I got this piece of information." It's like, well, that's nothing. That's just a website. You can do anything you want on the website, and I feel like we're still stuck in that mode of well, it's somebody said it online, so maybe it's got to be true, I guess, because someone said it. I think that hopefully goes away with the younger generation.
I think to some degree it has to do with there's responsibility for everyone here, but there's a partial responsibility, I think, on the larger media in not taking stances as often. You don't see as many sort of issues focused columns. You see a lot of sort of political horse race and stuff like that. But I think it's gotten further and further away from actually believing in stuff and institutions and things like that. And so it's just gotten to be a lot more just politicking and theatrics and people just making stuff up.
So do we think he's going to do well? Do we know what he's looking at? It's
a tough call. I mean, I don't know that there's any great candidates really, but there's that. I'm not from BC. Clearly, I don't know how much disenfranchised there is in BC. I know the prairies, right? We know the middle, but I don't know how BCers are feeling.
Yeah, I have no guess, just because same thing. I don't know enough people in BC to have any sort of sense of the vibe in BC. But what I will say is that a candidate in a party like John Rustad and Conservatives do not benefit from a long campaign. They are likely as high in the polls as they will be And the longer this campaign goes, the more stuff's going to come out. Like, I don't know if you saw that Oppo research file that the BC United had that got leaked out.
200 pages,
like, Yeah, 200 pages of dirt. And like the media is just beginning to sift through that stuff. There's lots.
Because apparently Rustad in June said he regretted getting the, quote, so-called vaccine against COVID-19. And
I love when they throw so-called
vaccine. And that vaccine mandates were, quote, not so much, end quote, about achieving herd immunity or stopping the spread of disease. Or they were about, quote, shaping opinion and control of the population. Bonkers, man. Get out of here.
Like, is this going to be like, are these people going to be like, you know, the ex high school football player that talks about I could have made it? Like, is COVID going to be that thing for them? It's like, remember when we survived COVID and they tried to give us the so-called vaccine? Like, come on. Move forward.
Absolutely.
But this is it. We're going to have one segment of the population who are stuck in the past, and we're just going to have to keep on trucking. Because what's going to happen, I really suspect, is this sort of convoy movement echo that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
I don't think it has real legs. I think it falls apart fairly quickly. Like, any movement based on anger can't really stay held together very long.
It fizzles.
That's the hope. That's the hope anyway. But exactly, as to Lisa's point, I agree. I think it's going to be one of those, not for every case, but for a lot of cases, it's going to be like saying, when we were kids, you know, my mothers kicked us out of the house at 7 a.m. We didn't come back until the streetlights came on. We were totally fine. And of course, the story is, well, the kids who came back were fine, you know.
Yeah, right.
People were dying left and right, but some of them were.
Have you ever seen the diagram of the plane, the World War? I think it was World War II planes, where they were like looking at what the planes came back with, where they had been shot when they came back, and it was like along the wings and the fuselage and stuff.
Right.
And there was big gaps around the engines, and so they're like, well, we should put more armor everywhere on the wings and stuff. And somebody finally explained, like, no, it's because the ones that got shot in the engines didn't come back.
Yes, yeah.
Just selection bias, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to one of my favorite topics ever. At a recent town hall, when asked about the chemtrails over Edmonton, Premier Danielle Smith, not a real name, responded that she was told, quote, if anyone is doing it, it's the U.S. Department of Defense.
My province isn't the craziest.
I watched. Smith continued, I have some limitations in what I can do in my job. I don't know that I would have much power if that is the case. If the U.S. Department of Defense is spraying us. This comes full circle to the whole crop spraying conversation earlier.
I'll get on the horn with the Pentagon in the morning and look into it.
Pentagon spokesperson, of course, responded later in the press saying, no, sir. So for good measure, NORAD chimed in and said that NORAD and U.S. Northern Command are not conducting any flight activities in Canada that involve the spraying of chemicals. I watched the piece and I thought, she's not saying, hey, everyone, it's the U.S. Department of Justice, but she's entertaining and condoning that line of thought to the point where she says it's probably America, because she feels that's going to get them off her back. What the hell's wrong with you people?
Lisa, it's embarrassing. Not all of us, but it's a lot.
In the water, I don't know.
No, well, yeah. I wish we could bring up the clip, because if you see her like sitting back, like holding her microphone the way she holds it like this, it's like,
good if you reenact it. Do it.
Right? Okay. Yeah. It's like she's like wide-eyed and she's like, I don't know, I called the woman that takes care of the airspace. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I called the airplane lady.
The woman that takes care of the airspace, right? Because you got to dumb it down
when I'm on holiday.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So, I think it's worth noting when you watch the clip, she starts to kind of say like, that's not a thing. And the room turns on her a little bit.
Yeah.
And then she's like, or maybe it's the U.S. feds. Who knows? She just can't say no to people.
I remember when we first, like when it was like during COVID and all the conspiracy theories, and there was this one video that went around about these chemtrails and they're poisoning us and all this stuff. And it was pollen. It had pollen from a tree had fallen on a car, and someone thought, oh, it's the chemtrails. Never before 2021 had I heard about a fucking chemtrail. Okay. But now everybody's trying to poison us all. Like it's in daily vernacular now. Chemtrail this,
Yeah.
chemtrail that. She looked like a deer in headlights. And of course it's her base, right? And so they want to know, what are you going to do about the chemtrails, Danny? And well, she's going to talk to the magic lady in the air. But yeah, you're right. When she picked up the vibe, like they wanted her so on board with like, yeah, like I'm going to protect you. We're going to get a big tarp and we're going to put it over Alberta and we're going to make sure that nothing comes down. And when they weren't getting that, she changed her tune. Right. So she's a fucking embarrassment. I don't understand.
For someone who's claimed that Canadian Conservatives are, quote, at risk of the dangerous rhetoric of progressive politicians, and has suggested that those who received a COVID vaccine fell for the, quote, charms of a tyrant. Not great. Little Hitler reference there.
Right.
And threatened Alberta's chief medical officer with imprisonment. Has Smith ever had any sense of logic or morals? Is this recent comment on her chemtrails a turning point, or more of the same? Is she doing a dog whistle to conspiracy theories? In my mind, I'm hoping that it's incredibly uncomfortable, and she's realizing she's got a bunch of people that she has to placate who are morons. And
she's overplayed her hand for sure.
Yeah.
But I think a big part of the issue that happened in this specific case is the base, like the most intense part of the base, know how many cards they're holding right now, right? They know that she is under enormous threat in a leadership review in November.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to squeeze everything they can out of her. Every wackadoo concession she can agree to, they're going to try to squeeze out of her. And she's not going to say no to them. Because, like, Henny didn't survive a leadership review. Well, he did, but what did he come in at? Like 52% or something? Like?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, like, he survived and resigned. Is Danielle Smith going to get even that? I don't know.
She's trying to say a lot of the right things to appease her base lately, right? Like we're going to get rid of the RCMP. We're going to have sheriffs. We're just going to give
You're
people
right.
guns.
There's the wackadoo base, but there's also, like, let's be very real here. There's a whole whack of pretty moderate folks who just kind of vote UCP because that's just what they vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how many of those folks are thinking, like, this is bonkers. Enough is enough.
I'm hoping the chemtrail talk gets the middle conservatives to be like, what? I don't want to be with that.
It's after the registration deadline, though.
Yeah, no.
It's funny how, you were saying this, you hadn't really heard since, apart from 2021 onwards, you hadn't really heard the chemtrails thing at all. But I mean, as a kid who was like right into UFOs and all that kind of stuff, and I would read lots of books about stuff like that, and paranormal and all that kind of things, and conspiracy theories. And that was always one of the ones. It was like in the 70s when I was reading this stuff, late 70s, it was like chemtrails, or they're spreading, the government's doing this. And then, of course, in those same books, they're like, but it turns out not. It's just air. That's all it is air.
But okay,
those are the same books you learned about Bat Boy in?
Yes, exactly.
So that's like the science fiction-y stuff that you'd listen to at 2 a.m. on AM radio. Like, okay, like I get it. Yeah. I'm talking in daily conversations. Right?
Oh, yeah,
like,
for sure.
Like mainstream out there, we're talking about chemtrails all the time. Do you think that like some of these things that were written, as a science-y fiction thing, people are like reverting back to that as some kind of like gotcha, like they're coming to get us now? Because like we don't have the hoverboards. I'm still waiting for the hoverboards to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So I just I don't understand the obsession. Where has there been any evidence of a lot of the stuff that a Danielle Smith is just sitting there pontificating about to appease her base? I don't get it.
The real question you have to ask is, how important is evidence to any of this?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Like, really, this whole thing is happening devoid of evidence. You could show them all the planes you like. You could walk them onto the tarmac. You could show them there's no chemicals here. You could do that till you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
They will never believe you because they've decided. And now they're immune to evidence.
So this is, obviously she's going to be introducing a bunch of legislation, and we, refer to it as the anti-trans legislation. And she was asked a question on our province, our premier bullshit radio show from a dad who had a legitimate question. And in referencing her legislation, she's like, we're going to limit the ability for, minors to use puberty blockers until the age of past puberty. That's basically
missing the point of it entirely.
Like, you know what I mean? So I look at someone who's actually like, these words are coming out of her mouth and she either doesn't understand what she's saying or she's fine with what she's saying. And the people she's speaking to don't understand what she's saying. I hate it here. Save us.
Yeah, which is worse.
Alberta's a beautiful province, though.
Alberta's a beautiful province and there are lots of lovely people in Alberta.
I agree. I completely
agree. And no rats.
Oh, that's a myth.
I can name a few.
It's. I think that we've talked about this before, but I think that there's a little bit of that pandemic effect of the people in power, whether that be newspapers, television news, politicians, saying this is the way things are, and then saying the next day, actually, that's not the way things are. Mm-hmm. And I think that blew a lot of people's minds. And I think that we just put a little seed of distrust in everything. Everyone was like, well, you know what? Maybe this whole thing's a ruse. Maybe this whole thing's... I remember back in... Maybe this, you wouldn't remember, but U2, the band, in their...
This is the folks who forced us to download it on their iPad.
That's right, exactly.
iPods, right?
Yes,
their album was called Achtung Baby. Mm-hmm. And their tour had flashing messages on the screen as their intro stuff. It was like lots of different things. Things like everything you know is wrong. And we've kind of gone from this notion of like this healthy distrust of everything you know is wrong. Well, not everything. Because anyone with any sense is going to be like, well, I know not everything. If I hammer a nail into my foot, it's probably going to hurt. I understand that. However, it made you really sort of think about other stuff, which I think was the point. Not to defend U2 here too much, but that the point of being, it's good to have a healthy distrust in some of the standards and some of the foundations of stuff that we're doing, because it doesn't necessarily, it's not beneficial to everybody. It's not beneficial to everyone in society. And if it doesn't have any benefits to us, then why are we maintaining it? That type of thing. Like with trans rights and stuff. It's like, it's an incredibly important issue, but it's also an incredibly tiny issue that will not affect the vast majority of people in Canada. So who cares?
The people that are complaining about it the most, it will not impact them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've decided that all of these people who have such need to march and do all this other stuff, they just have bad coping skills. Because legit, because the world evolves, things evolve, issues arise. We should be working together to try and, make it as best we can for everybody. But the people who can't, the people who couldn't cope during COVID with the constant changing of it's this, now it's this.
Sure.
I don't think it's necessarily a distrust. It's that sometimes you got to roll with the unknown. You know what I mean? And be comfortable in that we're all kind of doing it one day at a time. And I think a lot of these conservative premiers or Twitter junkies or whatever they are just can't cope with that. Either that or they all got COVID early on, took hydroxychloroquine, and now they're little...
What? Nay. So let's talk about... Let's turn the table a little bit here and talk about happier for now.
Oh, is this my time to bring everybody's spirits up?
Yes,
a good province? Okay.
Yeah, let's not just say the whole province is good, but we can certainly say the premier so far is incredibly likable.
Okay.
I think.
So here's the deal. In Manitoba, so it's worth noting they did not meet their target. Their target for the first year was adding 1,000 healthcare workers, and Wabkanu and the NDP government have added 873. So they've added 304 nurses, 290 aides, and 116 physicians, which is boatloads. But it's also worth noting, so they've been prioritizing hiring in northern and rural. And so that's where the majority of this hiring has happened. And so, if you are listening to this in Saskatchewan in particular, because there's an election coming up, there are ways to address this stuff. You can't just, you don't have to just shrug and say, yeah, the local emergency room's closed 3 days a week. So have your emergencies on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
If you
in
could.
business hours. Yeah.
But yeah, it's so, it's not perfect. Nothing ever is. But a big part of it is just they've taken a different tone. They're actually listening to workers and offering things like permanent contracts and stability.
Do we have any idea of how many people came from outside the province? Do we know that at all?
All of them.
All of them?
I'm not 100% sure. They spent
Because that's a hard
$310 million on the. Oh, here we go. 250 healthcare workers from out of province, including campaigning in the UK to attract physicians.
Oh.
See, I can see suckering people in from the UK. You're like, listen, look, it's Manitoba. It's cool. It's awesome.
So,
come on over.
Also
Come on
notable,
over.
60 have come out of retirement. People who said, I'm done, and actually changed their mind and said, you know what?
Good for them.
One more go.
That could be the people that retired in like 2021, 22.
Yeah, who were
said,
done
"Fuck
with all
this,"
the
right?
nonsense,
And then
yeah.
they're
This
like,
is
wait
it.
a minute. Yeah.
Maybe things are a little different. And I think it's worth noting, like, as much as it sounds like a tremendous sum of money, $310 million to right the ship of the healthcare system is a really good investment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's good bang for
Yeah,
buck.
it's phenomenal. I think it's
I would like-
fantastic.
I would like to see the statistics on where these healthcare workers came from, because you can't tell me that there's just an abundance of people graduating in Manitoba. I'm curious, because I know we've lost a lot here.
Right.
So.
You calling Steve a liar? Is that what you're saying?
Usually.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
Yeah, it's also very much worth noting. I just want to highlight this because this is a thing I think is cool. 7 midwives.
Ooh.
I'm all about that sort of thing, man.
Huh.
Like, let's get more midwifery in. 61 physician residents and 80 allied health workers.
Mm-hmm.
They're going up. They're going in the right direction, right?
I
Most of
hope-
the other provinces are going
I
down.
like
Shout out to
Wab
the
Canoe a
midwives
lot.
and doulas listening.
I like the fact that he was a rapper, and I like that. And I like
Check out
the
his
fact
album
that,
covers. They're awesome.
well, he's a cool guy. He's just a cool dude, and I'm hoping he
He's a
stays
real-
cool.
Yeah. He
I
seems
hope he
real.
stays cool. So,
Yeah.
Wab, if you're listening, stay cool, please.
He's a politician. He's going to have politician moments where he says something. You're like, don't know about that.
Yeah, but he had that moment, those kind of moments, not so much with saying stuff like that, but he's able to disagree with, for example, the federal government and still go jogging with the prime minister.
Well, but this is it.
That's
I
great.
think it's okay to have politicians who exist who you're able to go, I don't know about that, but he's not putting out stuff that's wacko.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, he's not digging tunnels to nowhere. Like, you can agree or disagree with how he approaches things, and he sometimes gets a little politician-y, but he's at least trying. You can recognize that.
Do you think he'd ever jump to the federal Liberals?
If he wanted to, he could do it. Here's the thing. We talked about this with Mosscrop. The Liberals are just buying time with whoever they put in.
Mm.
And if there's somebody who could buy him a little more runway, it might be Wab Canoe. But I doubt he does it.
Yeah.
There'd
Yeah,
have to
he's-
be another leader in the interim
Yeah.
for Wob to come in and then make a surge again. But
Yeah. It'd have to be
I
like
think-
post-election, I think.
yeah.
I think he waits for Jagmeet Singh time to come to an end after the election,
Mm.
and I really think he envisions saving the federal NDP. Is my guess, is that he sees himself as the guy who could right the ship, because the federal NDP is really poised to slot into that space that the Liberals are abandoning.
Yeah.
And if they actually had sharp leadership, they could be there.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. Like if they'd asked to be on our podcast first.
Not that we're petty.
Not that we're petty. And
We know our worth,
can hold-
okay?
Yeah, exactly. We can hold a grudge for a long time, but that's okay. It's not because Jugmeat blanked me in the Winnipeg airport. No, it's not that at all. It's fun.
Okay, I don't think he's going to ask to come on again.
Probably not.
Pretty sure we're okay with
I think we're off the menu.
There's always Wob, though. There's always Wob.
There's always Wob, exactly. Plus, I'm in no way making fun of his name, but I love the idea of Prime Minister Canoe for Canada. That's pretty cool.
Right? I love
That's
It
it.
pretty
feels
awesome.
spot on.
I
It
love
doesn't it though? It's like a children's book. I love it.
Yeah.
It's so great. Well, that was good. We sort of finished off on a nice little note of hopeful optimism. And the rest of the provinces, and we'll just say, and the rest, they're fine.
Conservative-led provinces. Wah, wah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're listening in New Brunswick, we didn't get to Blaine Higgs, but he sucks.
That's
He's the
almost like a
worst.
full show. So, yeah.
He's so
Which
bad.
maybe could be. We should get someone from New Brunswick on to talk about that. That'd be fun. I would like that. I like New Brunswick.
Oh,
We
can we
talked
do a
about that.
bilingual show?
We'd have to get
How's your French?
translation.
Je parle français un petit peu. Come on, that was pretty good.
That was very good.
I didn't know what kind of crowd reaction you were looking for there.
That was very good.
I said the exact same thing when asked by Gordon Ramsay, and he went, "Oh, not at all then." He said, "Do you speak French?" I said, "Oui, un petit peu." And he said, "So not at all then." I was like, damn you and your French accent.
Hang on, you just get that name you dropped there.
Just watch your feet.
Fancy. He's so fancy.
For all of you who are listening to the audio version, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, you can find us at podcastisbroken.ca, where you can subscribe with your email address, and you'll get notified every time there's a new episode. You can also find us on your favorite podcasting platform. For those of you who are paid subscribers, stick around for the improvised theme song. That's going to be great. But everyone else, we'll see you next week. Take care.
Take care of yourselves.
Take care, everybody.
The audio version of Podcast is Broken was produced, engineered, and edited by Owen Reynolds. The video version of the podcast was edited by Lisa Cumming. You can find past episodes and more at podcastisbroken.ca or your favorite podcast platform.